I have always been fascinated by the Copernican revolution. To give a scientific history refresh, and keep in mind I studied theology, not astronomy, Copernicus made the literally world-shifting discovery that the Earth revolved around the sun instead of the sun revolving around the Earth. In scientific terms, this is a shift from a geocentric understanding to a heliocentric understanding. While this might seem to us like no big deal now, it was met with intense resistance and criticism. Copernicus was called a heretic. It was a substantial change in the narrative of how people saw themselves in relationship to the cosmos. Humanity on this planet was at the center of everything, and now suddenly the center was shifting. It challenged social, relational, theological, religious norms to reimagine our orientation and movement through the universe. Today, this is taught as basic scientific fact, but we can see throughout history what can happen when a primary identity-forming, worldview-orienting narrative is challenged and transformed. Today, explorers, seekers, and revolutionaries continue to push the boundaries of our normative narratives, those assumptive stories that we take for granted and assume adequately describe the nature of reality and our relationship to it. Thomas Berry and Brian Swimme, in their groundbreaking book, The Universe Story, express the importance of, quote, knowing the story of the universe, of the planet Earth, of life systems, and of consciousness, all as a single story, and recognizing the human role in that story, end quote. What might happen if we saw ourselves in our daily lives in relationship to the entire cosmos? What if we walked around with the awareness that we are made of ancient particles and stardust and energy and life? What if we could place ourselves regularly in an unfathomably long history and realize how fleeting and fragile and consequential to the whole of everything are these sacred years of our lives? What if we shifted the center of awareness from our own private concerns to our intrinsic interdependence with all that has been, is, and will be? How would this change our relationships with each other and the earth and the creatures and plants and galaxies who are our kin? Jesus understood the power of narrative. His compassionate ministry was expressed in stories. He frequently used real-life examples and parables to shift the normative narratives that had been unchallenged and unexamined. When the disciples expressed an attitude of scarcity, Jesus found a way to feed the multitudes. When the people wanted to stone the adulterous woman, Jesus confronted dehumanizing legalism with the sharply revealing proclamation, "Let anyone among you who is without sin be the first to throw a stone at her." To the dominant narrative, an eye for an eye, Jesus proclaimed love for enemies. In the spirit of creative nonviolence, he encouraged ridiculous generosity rather than retaliation. When he encouraged his disciples to turn the other cheek, freely give of their coat, and walk an extra mile. He named the absurdities of the powers that be and changed the story of the most vulnerable around him. Blessed are you who are poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are you who are hungry now, for you will be filled. Blessed are you who weep now, for you will laugh. From Luke 6:20 through 21. In his dying moments, the title King of the Jews was meant to mock the kingdom of God his life professed, but instead became a prophetic reframing. the Christian story has also been told and retold, reclaimed and rewritten throughout the centuries. Liberation theology tells the story of a God on the side of the poor and oppressed of the earth, as a rejection of imperial Christianity that justified colonization and violence against indigenous peoples. Feminist theology tells the story of Jesus through the lens of the first women apostles and prophets he empowered in a patriarchal culture. Ecological theology tells the story of an incarnational view of reality, in which the divine life is present within every iota of the created world, and we too are part of this stunning and sacred creation. Community of Christ is telling the story today about Jesus, the peaceful one, inviting all people into the many dimensions of wholeness and salvation in our here and now lives, including social, relational, spiritual, and ecological. Narratives have power in our personal and communal lives. Our stories have the potential to both limit and liberate. As my partner Zach has noted, the stories we tell are a matter of life and death. Ask the children in Gaza and Israel. Ask the Afghan refugee settling into her new home. Ask the trans youth bullied at school. What narratives are running through our minds unquestioned? What stories impact our daily actions and interactions with others? How do the stories we tell influence who we choose to love and fear, who we include and who we reject? Is your story about a vengeful God who seeks dominance, or a loving God whose wide embrace reaches all? As a mother of young children, I am particularly attuned to the stories being told to our kids. Is this a story of redemptive violence or restorative justice? Is this story shaping my children's view of the world to be more kind, generous, creative members of society, or one that contributes to fear, suspicion, and separation from others? Consider your own life. What are the stories you most frequently tell about yourself and others? If asked right now to share the story of your life, what themes would emerge most prominently and why? Where do we locate ourselves in the story? It's nearly impossible to resist centering ourselves and our own narratives, but we must stay open to the reality that we live in a many-storied world. We cannot reduce the world to characters in our own story. We must be open to the ways our stories intersect and diverge and want to be told together as the larger, longer story of God's creation. Everyone has a story. Are we listening to the stories of our family and friends, neighbors and strangers, the stories of trees and soil and fellow creatures on this vastly storied planet? There are stories collapsing and unfolding about what is happening with Christianity in Western contexts. We feel them poignantly in our congregations or loss of congregations or the struggle to find a spiritual home. Our narratives for making sense of things seem to have crumbled. The stories we have told often feel hollowed out as we struggle to connect with the ever-shifting world around us. John Philip Newell describes this feeling of disorientation and collapse of religious norms and narratives in his powerful book, The Rebirthing of God: Christianity's Struggle for New Beginnings. He writes, quote, "There are three main responses to this collapse. The first is to deny that it is happening. The second is to frantically try to shore up the foundations of the old thing. The third, which I invite us into, is to ask what is trying to be born that requires a radical reorientation of our vision. What is the new thing that is trying to emerge from deep within us and from deep within the collective soul of Christianity? End quote. A radical reorientation of our vision, a new story, a new way of understanding ourselves in relation to everything else. What if we aren't the center? What if God is actually the center and we are called to revolve our lives around God rather than assuming God will revolve around us? What if this time of collapse is the beginning of rebirth? If Jesus were telling parables in our context today, imagine the object lessons he would use. What stories would he tell? Don't assume that he would be polite. Think of what would get right to the heart of the matter in challenging our unjust norms and conventions. Remember our history lesson about the Copernican revolution? The shift to a heliocentric understanding was disruptive, but ultimately liberating. It challenged the dominant narrative, but it also opened wide the door for all kinds of discoveries about the nature of the universe, reality, and our sacred place within it. Congregational change expert Mark Lau Branson describes organizations, think your community or congregation, in similar language. He suggests that, quote, organizations are heliotropic. This is a botanical term about a plant's orientation. Plants lean toward the sun. Similarly, organizations lead toward the source of energy, especially if there is a hopeful, imagined future. When memories, imaginations, and conversations are engaged to nourish participants with the best and most life-giving resources, the church will lean in the direction of those narratives and practices. End quote. Heliocentric, heliotropic, leaning toward and revolving around the source of greatest energy and life. Narratives are ways we make meaning, find purpose and identity. What does our sacred story mean in this light? What stories can we tell ourselves, each other, and the world around us that ground our lives and actions in the source of greatest energy and life? What stories from our past and present, in our families, congregations, and cultures are we allowing to define us without examination and reflection? What new stories might liberate us into expanded worldviews and actions that bring wholeness and flourishing and put us in right relationship with the sacred world around us? Our story is always a story in relationship to the larger stories to which we are connected. The story of life itself, the story of the universe, the story of God's love, grace, and justice throughout time. What is the reorienting, recentering story that is seeking to emerge through us for this time? What is the story the world most needs for disciples of Jesus to share and live today? I am filled with hope when I imagine articulating and living the world-changing story of Jesus, the peaceful one, in a world yearning for this transformative vision. In the words of Barb and Dick Howard, past, present, future, joy, sorrow, hope. We write the story and life is its scope. God's love assures us through the unknown. God's grace sustains us. We're not alone. May we have the courage to tell and live the stories of our faith that matter, that change hearts and change worlds. We are writing the sacred story even now. What will we choose to say in this defining moment? What will we choose to live?